Welcome to this edition of Going Deep with me, Richard Mills, and today we have John Januszczak with us. He is the CEO of UBX, which is the Union Bank Fintech division, highly regarded. The company is widely regarded as the leader in fintech solutions in the nation of Philippines here. So we're really pleased to have him. So good day to you, John. Really glad to have you with us.
Thanks, Richard. Really happy to be here with you.
Wonderful. Well, John, can you tell us a little bit about a short history of your career, as short as or as long as you like? Can you tell us about your background so people understand a bit about you?
Yeah, sure. Why don't I try to give you the whole thing? I'll go back. I'll go all the way back to university. I studied astrophysics. That's actually my course of study. Astrophysics is physics applied to astronomy, and so we would do a lot of observation work where we were collecting data from stars and star clusters and stellar atmospheres and things like that. When I started, we would collect data by taking images with film. So we would have these very large glass plates that were covered in film emulsion, and we would literally go into a completely black room. We would cover these things with a black sheet. We would carry them to the telescope. We would mount them on the telescope, and we would take a 3-hour, a 5-hour exposure of whatever it was that we were trying to collect data on. By the end of my studies, that had actually gone digital, and we started using what are called charge coupled devices, or CCDs for short. The way a CCD works is so here's a little bit of physics for everybody. It's called the photoelectric effect. When light hits a pixel, the amount of current generated will be in proportion to the intensity of the light. And I know I'm geeking out a little bit here, but the reason why that's actually important is that's the concept and the premise behind the chips that are in everyone's mobile phone today. So when you take a picture with your mobile phone, it is the evolutionary offspring of these CCD chips that we had started with so many years ago. Now, the interesting thing about using these chips at the time is, unlike using it in your phone today, there's all kinds of software. You take your picture, you apply some filters, you share it with your friends, you upload it to Instagram. Back then, there was none of that. There was no software at all. Actually, all you got was the current coming out of these chips. And so we had to write software from scratch in order to process the images, or to create an image out of the electrical currents and signals that were coming off of these chips. And so I never set out to be a computer programmer, but I needed to do computer programming in order to get a job done, which was related to my studies. Now, when I decided to move on from academia, what I discovered very quickly is that, and you can do this today. Go to monster.com or indeed.com and type in astrophysics. You're not going to get a lot. There's not going to be a lot of not a lot's going to show up. But if you put in technology, whether it's computer programming or something related to that, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And back in the day when I left school, I discovered the exact same thing. What I had done from an academic pursuit, that was quite specialized, quite niche. But my technology skills were very marketable. Yes, very marketable, and that's how I started in private enterprise. I worked one of my first jobs was at a telecommunications company in Canada. I worked on technology that helped us design the physical plant. So at the time, there was a lot of coax and fiber, and we had software that designed the plant and then automatically generated, for example, a bill of materials that got uploaded to the warehouse, and that allowed the trucks to go out to the construction sites and actually build the plant. And then, of course, we built software to monitor those networks. Yeah, so that's how I started. And from there, I got into business systems. So systems that, supported the running of the business, like general ledger technology, accounts payable, things like that. And from there, I had a short stint in insurance. That would come back to haunt me, and I guess I'll get back to that in a minute. But I really took a liking to the fact that technology could be applied to business processes and operations. And I worked for about 13 years directly in commercial software, and we built our specialty was software that both automated business processes. So we had technology that would allow, for example, a business user to draw a flow chart, and then from that flow chart, we would create an automated process out of that. And today, this is very, this is this isn't anything new today. They'll call it business process management suites or process orchestration, and there's a lot of commercial software that addresses this. But at the time, we were kind of at the forefront of that. Yeah,
sure it was. Sure.
And we, and then from there, we started getting into the analytics space. So we would use our software. Not only could it implement a process, but we could simulate a process before you implemented it. So that was, the value proposition there was that before you spent a lot of money changing your process, you could actually simulate it and do some design, multiple design scenarios up front to see what worked best. And at the tail end of all this, we would accumulate all of so once you've digitized a process, now you can collect all the data, allow you to apply analytics. And this is before the heyday of machine learning and AI. But again, we're kind of at the forefront of that. And we were doing a lot of analytics work with process data. So maybe this is before big data, but definitely we're collecting a lot of data and leveraging that for analytics. A large multinational insurance company was looking to build this capability into their operations, and that's how I got recruited by Manulife.
I see. Yes, of course.
And yeah, and so I started with Manulife in or around 2012, if memory serves me. And Manulife ran, so they were doing a couple of things. They were working on digitizing their operations, as many companies now are doing. But they were also setting up a global shared service center. Well, they had actually already set up a global shared service center. And that was run mostly in the Philippines. Some of it was in China, but mostly in the Philippines. And given the work that I was doing, they, within the first year of me joining Manulife, they had relocated me to the Philippines. I worked with the Global Shared Service Center here, and from there, I moved to become the chief operating officer of the local operating life insurance company in the Philippines. So Manulife not only runs a global shared service center in the Philippines, they also create products and sell insurance products directly to Filipinos, and that's through the operating life insurance company in the Philippines. So I moved to that entity as their chief operating officer.
I see.
Yeah, from there, I did a decent sized distribution deal with Union Bank of the Philippines. And that's how I got to know, the Union Bank organization. And I've already spoken a bit about Manulife and Manulife being on a digital transformation journey. And most companies, it's kind of old news now. Almost all companies are on some kind of digital transformation journey. But in working with Union Bank, I got to know the Union Bank organization and the leaders there. And one thing that impressed me, they too were on a digital transformation journey. But one thing that impressed me was how, they were all, if you've ever watched poker, Texas Hold'em, and somebody goes all in, and that's how Union Bank showed up to me. It was like, okay, like everybody else, they're doing digital transformation for, and for Union Bank, they were a traditional legacy bank in the Philippines. But what impressed me is they were all in. They were all in on digital transformation and really pursuing it in earnest and to the core. Of course, we were always trading stories and trading notes. And an opportunity arose for me to join the Union Bank family. And given how impressed I was with the organization, I jumped at it.
Sure.
It was almost a no-brainer. When I joined Union Bank as a consultant. And Union Bank had been on a digital transformation journey for a number of years. Union Bank today is to the point where it is digital to the point where you don't have to go to a Union Bank branch to bank with Union Bank. You can open an account, you can download their app as an individual or as a business. You can create an account online. And you can transact and do your banking online from there. And when I joined Union Bank, we were already looking at what's next. So what's post-digital transformation? What is next? And in enabling the kind of digital banking experience that I've just alluded to, with the app. In order to enable that, Union Bank had effectively wrapped what's called an API, an application programming interface, around the bank. And for a consumer or a business, what that might look like at first is downloading an app and interacting through the app. But because there's this API behind all that, and typically this happens with a corporate or a larger business, is they might leverage that API to integrate their business systems directly with the bank. And so there is no front end. You just, as the business is conducting its business, it will do its banking automatically through this integration. So it kind of gave us a hint of what the future, or at least what we think the future is going to look like. And that is what we like to call invisible banking. And so that's what we believe, or at least our hypothesis is that in the future, banking, not just for large companies, but also for SMEs and for individuals, will be largely invisible. It will just be embedded into the activities or the experiences that really matter to you as an individual or as a business. And today, digital platforms, and we all know the big ones like Facebook and Google, but there are many more. I think in the Philippines we don't really have Amazon, but we have Lazada. that's a big platform, and
Sure.
and we have companies in the Philippines like Home Credit that are very big into very big into supporting consumers as they buy gadgets and white goods, appliances. And so they're acquiring customers and they are facilitating more and more, or digital platforms in general are facilitating more and more the activities and experiences that truly matter And so our goal at UBX is to either create platforms for digitally or underserved communities, or to aggregate and virtualize financial services so that they can be embedded into the platforms like the Lazadas, or the Home Credits of the Philippines, or the other platforms in the world, so that we can provide banking in a way that is invisible.
I see.
So there you go. There's the whole story of my career right up to today.
That's a good story. Well, just for people who don't know, John, the Manulife operations. Now, can you describe a little bit about that? Because they're one of the oldest. Well, this is a very large global organization, first of all, but their operations in Philippines, they both have, shared services operations, and they have what I call commercial operations. I don't know if that's the right word, but can you describe a little bit about that, and how large, say, in people, the organization you worked with there, John?
Yeah, sure. So so Manulife is a very old insurance company, actually, and a lot of people don't know. A lot of Filipinos, because Manulife has been around in the Philippines for so long, many Filipinos actually think that Manulife is a Filipino company. Actually, Manulife even, it sounds kind of, it even works well in kind of the local language.
Huh.
But Manulife is started as the manufacturer's life insurance company of Canada, if I'm not mistaken. You can fact check all this for me afterwards, Richard. But it's a very old company. I think it was founded in the 1860s or 1880s. Yeah, really? in wow. Canada. But Manulife has been involved in Asia since almost the beginning. I believe that they sold their first policy in the Philippines in 1905. Jeez. And they incorporated in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, in 1910, I believe. And I might be off by a few years, okay? But 1910. So yeah, Manulife has been operating in the Philippines for a long time. But they also operate in other markets. They operate, at the time, at least when I was with them, they were operating in 10 other jurisdictions in Asia, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, mainland China, Indonesia, etc. Obviously, they have operated, and they have Canada is not a large market, but Manulife has a significant slice of the Canadian market. So that's sure. Another jurisdiction. And John Hancock in the United States, so that's the brand in the US, but that's owned by Manulife. So people in the US might not know the Manulife brand, but they certainly know the John Hancock brand. And like a lot of multinationals in the I guess the late 1990s and certainly into the 21st century, the beginning of the 21st century, they looked to leverage their global operations. And of course, the Philippines is home to a very large and mature business process outsourcing industry. And a lot of those companies are businesses unto themselves, and they do business processing on behalf of third parties. But a lot of the BPOs in the Philippines are what we call captives. They're actually owned by a large typically a multinational company. And they provide business processing services on behalf of the global operations. And Manulife is no different. Manulife had established a global shared service center in the Philippines. And by the time I joined, I think there was over 4,000 people at the Global Shared Service Center. Today, it's likely much larger, but it was over well over 4,000 at the time, and we were providing business processing services on behalf of many of the markets and jurisdictions that I mentioned. From there, I went to the original operating life insurance company in the Philippines, which is the original Manulife brand in the Philippines, which,
Yes.
we would call it Manulife Philippines. And so this is where it's interesting. As large as the global shared service operation is, or was at the time for me when I was with them, believe it or not, the local life insurance business is quite large, but for a different reason. So in the Philippines, we were selling product that was developed for Filipinos, and we're selling directly to Filipinos. And we do that through brokers and through a captive agency. When I was at Manulife Philippines, at least at one point, the size of our agency was about 10,000. So it was huge. It was absolutely huge. And then that's on top of, our operation that supports that agency. And, these are people doing product development, doing underwriting, processing claims, administering policies, and of course, all of the other functions that are required to run a business, like finance and procurement and facilities and all those things. I think we had over 50 branches across the Philippines by the time I left, and then, of course, we had a joint venture with China Bank, and so that's another operation, Manulife China Bank. So, as big as the BPOs are, and as big as the Manulife Global Shared Service Center was, the size of the local life insurance operations in the Philippines is equally as large, but for a different reason, and really because of the size of the distribution organization. Yeah,
sure. That's interesting. I didn't know that, John. I don't know why, Canada's a small country and how they ended up doing such big work here in Philippines, along with your friends. Sun Life also has done very well.
Sun Life is, I know a little bit less of the details, but it's the same kind of thing. They sold their first insurance policy in the Philippines. Maybe even a few years earlier than Manulife. I think they incorporated in the Philippines a few years before Manulife did. And if my ranking of the local life insurance companies is current, I believe that Sun Life is still the largest single life insurance company in the Philippines.
I think they are. I'm not up to date, but that's what I was told a few years ago. So so good, both good representatives and contributors to the nation in various ways. So now, John, how you ended up in UBX? It was more than just, the guys and then they called you, or did you call them, or how did that transpire, just for helping with people who might, face this kind of situation in their own life?
Yeah. It's often all about relationships. And one thing that I tell people, one thing that I encourage people to do, and I'll be honest with you, it's the thing that we probably, you might be the exception, Richard, because I like, this is your business. But listen, we can never do enough networking.
Yes.
That is absolutely critical, that, while you if you're honing your craft, or if you're building capability or your expertise, but while you're doing that, in kind of equal measures, you always have to be, quote unquote, marketing yourself, but it's not a hard sell. I mean, the way that it really, in my opinion, needs to show up is you are networking, you're getting to know people, and you are developing relationships. And for me, for me and Union Bank, it was very much, it was very much a case of that. I had gotten to know members of the leadership team at Union Bank, and I'll be honest with you, exactly how that happened. It was just probably through just being very active in the not just the business community, but the financial services community here in the Philippines, and you get to know people. At the time, Union Bank had what's called an open architecture for bank assurance, which means that they were open to a lot of banks in the Philippines. And this isn't just in the Philippines, this is a worldwide phenomena. They typically have or work towards exclusive bank assurance relationships with an insurance company. So the bank provides distribution of the insurance products of the insurance company through their branch network or through their banking relationships. And so typically what will happen is an insurance company will do a deal to have an exclusive relationship with a bank. Yep. In the past, not all banks followed that path. Union Bank does have an exclusive bank assurance relationship now, but at the time they didn't. And they were open, and like I said, we were able to do a commercial arrangement with Union Bank. And once you have an agreement, once you're doing business together, you get to know each other. Get to know each other a lot better and a lot more quickly. But it was great. It was great getting to know the Union Bank people, because I'd like to think that we provided value to Union Bank's customers through the products that we offered. I'd like to think that we provided good service. But for me, looking into Union Bank, what I saw was a very impressive organization, like I said, that was pursuing digital transformation to the core and very much in earnest. And so that's how I got to know Union Bank.
Okay, interesting. And maybe if you could describe, because a lot of people don't know the difference between Union Bank and UBX. Could you just talk about, they maybe know Union Bank because you see their branches everywhere, but you are a fintech division. And maybe if you could tell us more about the organization, how many people are with you and what you're trying to do, sure, and so on.
Sure. So when we looked at what happens post digital transformation, what's next? Okay. I already shared with you that, our hypothesis is that the future will be one of invisible banking. And what we besides everything else that I've shared with you, what we realized was that we would need to become a company that provided technology as its main value proposition to execute on that hypothesis or on that vision. So that was one thing. The other thing that we recognized was that we needed to be open to the products of other financial service providers, and so that was another thing we know. And then the other thing that we also recognized was that we wouldn't necessarily have all the good ideas. We definitely wanted to have the capability to invest in other financial technology companies that would accelerate what we were building or what we wanted to build, or they were aligned in our vision. They were developing platforms for heretofore digitally and financially underserved communities. So, and just one example of that, we invested in a company called Xlog, the company is actually called ShipTech, but the platform is called Xlog, and it's a digital logistics platform for businesses. So in the past, that business has been highly manual. It involves freight forwarders and custom brokers and whatnot. And they've created a digital platform that digitizes all of that, right? And so, there's a great example of, well, we're not going to build that ourselves, but they are building a digital platform for a digitally and a financially underserved community. We can definitely leverage on that platform to embed financial services into it.
Okay.
But anyways, whether we're building technology, whether it's a need to be open to working with other financial service providers, or whether it's having a fund or being an investment arm, that's kind of beyond the charter of a bank. And so we recognize that the best way, or at least our thought was that the best way to execute on this vision was to spin out an entity, a new company, and that company's UBX. And this company would be the fintech venture studio to build, but also the fintech venture fund to invest in the ideas of others. All aligned with this thesis of invisible banking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And well, okay, so your plans for UBX. Okay, so you're going to invest and you're going to build and transform. Okay, fair enough. Well, John, what are some of the reasons that people, if I can take this to a different direction, what are the main reasons people are promoted to senior leadership roles? What do you think are the main factors?
Yeah, so capability, I think the natural answer for a lot of people is, capability, right? So the more expert you become, the more that you get promoted. And I think there is an element of truth to that. And I think as a manager or a leader, having expertise in an area that you are managing is definitely useful. But I would argue that it's, at the end of the day, not the most important thing.
Okay.
And in the past, here we'll date ourselves again. You're likely familiar with the Peter principle, Richard. Yeah, and this might not be as familiar to maybe younger people. I don't know when that book was written. I think it was written in the 1960s or 1970s. But the Peter principle is that you get promoted, to the high, to the point where you become kind of incompetent.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of a pessimistic or negative way of stating. Of really stating that capability is important, but it's not the most important thing when it comes to promotion. And I think when it comes to promotion, you need to look for the qualities or the attributes of a leader. Okay, so capability, yes, but equally or perhaps more important, do you have the skills or the potential to develop the skills to become an effective leader? And those skills show up in a myriad of different ways. Are you effective at building relationships? It's very difficult to manage a group of people if you do not or cannot establish trust. And the way that we establish trust as human beings is to develop a relationship, right? So relationship building skills are important, not just to your career, but if you want to, get promoted or be in a leadership position, relationship building skills are important. Can you effectively delegate work? As a leader, you will be directing as a leader, you have to make the sum greater than you have to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. So you have to become astute at how to effectively delegate. And by the way, delegation isn't just telling somebody to do it because you don't want to do it. That's not it at all. It's all about effective distribution of work. And at some point, the people in the delegation chain have to be effective at prioritizing work or deprioritizing work for people in the chain. So it's delegation is a big skill, right? And so that's another one. And there's a whole bunch. I mean, maybe the other one that's very important is coaching.
Okay.
Right. There's the saying, the quick saying is, catch somebody a fish, you feed them for a day, teach them to fish, you feed them for life. Right. Sure. And so how can you coach people to become capable? We talked about capabilities. Certainly if you're a leader, you're going to lean on the capabilities of your team. And so how do you develop their capabilities? And then I guess lastly, how do you motivate them? Because when you need to when you need people to do something, there's two aspects of it. The first one is, can they do it? Are they even capable? So that's the coaching part. They have to be. Sure. If they're not capable, they have to be developed into someone who is capable. So can they do it? But the second part of it is, will they do it? Just because somebody can do something doesn't mean they will. And that's the motivation part. So again, as a leader, the coaching part, but also the motivating part.
Yeah, those are good ones. So yeah, okay. So again, you said delegation, coaching. What was the other one? Motivation. There was one more. Is that it?
Oh, I've lost track of.
Delegation. No, I lost. But that's a very good one. So delegation.
Relationships, relationship building.
Oh yeah, relationship building.
That might be the most. By the way, that might be the most important one.
I agree. If someone doesn't know you and trust you, it's hard to work with people. But yeah, so the coaching. So that's interesting. So delegation without coaching can be abdication. But with coaching and motivation, you can really get effective delegation. Okay, so that's a very good thing. Now, would you give that same to young people moving up in their careers? They all want to be people like you someday, John. Is there anything else that you would recommend? Those are four excellent, good starter things, or not just starter things. These are lifetime things. But what else would you recommend to young people? Hope I don't put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I think what I would recommend to young people is that they do develop expertise, in something. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that you have the credibility. Yes. of you don't have to be the best, but you have a credible amount of expertise. Yeah, in something. And I think that's important. That's often and I think this just makes intuitive sense. That's often the launch pad. As I said, often people initially are promoted and get the opportunity to manage or to lead because of developing capability or expertise. So, that might not be the ultimate solution as we've discussed, but it's a likely starting point. So I think you have to recognize that. And I think it's important that you do develop that expertise. But yeah, I think you need to invest in learn it, like anything else, becoming an effective manager, or anyone can be promoted, I guess. But to be effective, you need to develop yourself as a manager or as a leader. And there are important skills. So the ability to develop relationships,
Yeah.
are one of them. I'll give you a classic example that a lot of, that a new manager, someone who's new to managing people, can take advantage of right away. Okay, so here's the formula. To be effective as a leader or a manager, let's just make this very basic. Just to be effective as a manager, you need to have a trust relationship. If people trust you, they are likely to follow your lead, or to call you out when you might be doing the wrong thing. So you need trust for that too. People need to know that they trust you to give, and that you will receive feedback. They need to trust you that when you give them feedback, it is delivered genuinely and out of genuine caring for that person and for their performance. So you need a trust relationship, and the way to develop trust is a relationship, and the way to develop a relationship is time. You need to spend time with people, and a lot of new managers will potentially make the mistake of, well, I'm working with these people all day, so I'm spending time with them. And it's like, yeah, that's task oriented. That's often topic oriented. But a very basic thing that you can do is set up a regular, and if you could do this weekly, weekly to me is kind of the minimum, but set up a regular one-on-one with your direct reports, and make that meeting their agenda. And so what you're signaling is that spending time with you is important, and your agenda is important. If I'm the manager, if I want to talk to you about something that needs attention, I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, that's my job. I have to do that. But to spend time with people on topics that are important to them, that is spending time. And when you spend time, when you can spend time like that, that's how, that, or at least that's one of the building blocks to establishing a relationship. And hopefully that relationship leads to trust. So there's a very specific example of a very basic thing that a new manager can do. And I know I drilled into that quite a bit, but in similar fashion, learning how to effectively coach, and coaching is usually about asking a lot of questions versus giving advice.
Yes.
Okay. Again, when you're working with a team, if at all possible, start with a question, and the question can be very basic. Like, Richard, what's on your mind? It can be that simple, right? So anyways, but I won't drill into that one as much. But learning, and there's lots of material on, one thing that we're blessed with in the internet age, in the digital age, is access to me. There are so many books, there are so many YouTube videos, TED Talk, and it sounds very basic, but we are blessed with an abundance of resources. And so spend time learning how to effectively coach or become an effective coach. How to give feedback is important. That's another it's another thing that if you go at it, simplistically, you'll probably blow it. But as a leader, as a manager, you really need to master, or at least, and by the way, I don't want to sound like I'm an expert in any of this. This is for me. I continue to develop and to learn. I'm on the journey too, like anybody else, right? But yeah. So I don't. Please don't allow me to come across as the authority. But I am. Hopefully I can share what I think, it makes a difference. And so learning how to give feedback, I think, is important. We already talked about delegation, and that's a big especially as you scale, and especially as you scale or your organization becomes bigger or you get promoted to even higher levels, your ability to delegate effectively and to be comfortable with that, is big. And then there's the converse of that. One thing, here's another thing that I learned. It's like the yin and the yang, right? All things in balance, right? And so, as you become a manager, you will set goals, you will set targets, you will create key performance indicators, KPIs. But KPIs always come in balance, right?
Okay.
So for example, if I'm in a call center and I want to drive up the time to answer, or how quickly I pick up the phone, one way to do that is to just pick it up and hang up. Right? So that KPI will be awesome, but of course your customers will not be very happy at all, right? So typically typically good goals, good targets, good KPIs come in pairs. Okay, and there's typically a performance target offset by a quality target. So for example, I'll use that call center example. Time to answer would probably be offset by something like customer satisfaction or first call resolution, that you actually address the issue on that first call. And so they always kind of come in pairs. So getting back to maybe the larger pattern, you have to become effective at delegating, but then you have to offset that. A good manager or a good leader and by the way, from time to time, so you can't do this all the time, but from time to time, you got to dig deep. You got to audit, right? So yes, you have to delegate, but from time to time, you need to also have the ability to dig deep and get into the details, get into the weeds, so that's another skill or mindset that I think can be developed. And usually the trigger for that. Here's another kind of leadership thing, right? These days we hear big data and machine learning and AI, and we're very, if we're not data driven, I think everyone aspires to be very data driven. But when the data that you're getting does not match anecdote, that's usually that should be a bit of a bit of a warrant. That might be where you want to kind of offset the delegation, which is necessary, where you might want to offset that by doing a little bit of targeted auditing or kind of digging deep. And I think if you can do both of those effectively, you really gain the respect of your team. They know that you trust them, but they also know that you're not afraid to get involved. You're not afraid to get into it with them, when it becomes necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Good material, John. John, international experience. Now I don't know, seems like you've done well with it. But what do you think about your career? I mean, has it cut you off going back to Canada, or could you go back to your home country in a more grander manner? What do you think about that as far as international experience and in your career? Let's say first.
Yeah. So yeah, just to be very maybe tactical about it. The level of growth in Asia versus Canada, where I come from, or North America, it's just simply much higher. The demographics are different. North America, these are largely developed nations and economies. While in Asia, we have an emerging and a very large emerging middle class. And the growth rates as a result are significant. So I worked in insurance, and, getting a few percentage points of growth, in Canada would be a pretty good thing. But when I joined Manulife Philippines, as an example, about a year into my tenure there, we were processing on the last day of the month as much new business as we were processing in an entire month the year before. I mean, it was, and people from North America do not intuitively get, and I'm generalizing, by the way. There are industries in North America that, tech especially, it's going through tremendous growth. Don't get me wrong, but just if I can generalize, I don't think in general, it's difficult for a North American to understand or comprehend not just the size of the opportunity, but the level of growth. So, and of course, when you're in a high growth market, everything is accelerated. The opportunity, the amount of learning you need to do, the amount of work to do. So for me personally, coming to Asia and being exposed and having an opportunity to work in this economy has absolutely afforded me the ability to, out of sheer necessity, to accelerate my own learning, and it's just a very big ocean, so there's lots of opportunity, right? So yeah, so that I think that's part of it, and the other part of it is the world, and I know the winds blow differently day to day, and there's all kinds of there's protectionism here one day, and then the next day it's something free trade, and it's something, and now we have the pandemic, and but in general, the economy is becoming more globalized, and more, if you are not doing it already, the opportunities more and more will present themselves to transact, not just at a local or a domestic scale, but at a global scale. And so, of course, and this is just, this is just kind of logic. The more exposure you have to international markets or experience, and of course, the best way to do that is to just pick yourself up and locate yourself directly in it. The more exposure you have to that, the more effective you are likely to be in developing those relationships, and therefore being able to transact, right? So I think it just logically follows that, given the macro trend towards globalization, international experience is going to bode well for an individual who pursues it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. John, both of us have high respect for Filipino managers and contributors, people we work with. Sometimes, though, you see people Filipinos can be a bit overwhelmed or intimidated, maybe by a fast-talking international manager who talks over top of them, and they can sometimes clamp down and not able to, they just get intimidated. What advice would you give Filipinos in how to work with, demanding guys? I mean, you're a friendly type, but there's some aggressive people who come from wherever, North America, Europe, or whatever. How do you advise them? How do you coach them to work with people like that?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to supplement. I'm going to augment a little bit. But let's start directly with the question that you asked. So first of all, the people you should probably be asking are the people who work for me or work with me at UBX. Oh, okay. Yeah, like how do you deal with John? But yeah, so what advice do I give to Filipinos in dealing with let's say North Americans, right? I mean, I'm not, my family heritage is very much European, but I grew up in Canada, so I can credibly speak to the North American experience.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think the advice that I would like, first of all, yeah, coming from North America compared to the Philippines, we might, and again, we have to be careful here because we run into the risk of generalizing or overgeneralizing. So please, take what I'm going to say. Just keep in mind that we're kind of generalizing a bit for the sake of a conversation, and of course, it's never that simple.
Yeah.
But we, from North America, by Philippine or Filipino standards, we might come across as quite direct, quite succinct in our communication. You mentioned talking, so for example, talking over somebody is in general probably a bit impolite, but it's kind of acceptable in North America. People, it's okay, yeah. And I think rank is respected in North America, but maybe in a slightly different way. And it's the way that a subordinate might talk to their manager in North America. For maybe in some traditional Filipino context, that might be a little surprising.
Sure.
So I think, first of all, my first piece of advice is just that. It's just awareness. When a North American talks over somebody, and God forbid it's their manager, it's not necessarily disrespect. When your foreign manager speaks very bluntly and directly, it's not really about you personally. It's about the work. It's probably about the work. And so just to be aware of that, that might be one piece of advice I would give. And maybe the second piece of advice I would give is that, knowing that, and with a lot of respect here, because it's easy to talk, right? Okay, so now that you know that, you can just change your behavior. That's too simple. It's that's not it at all. But with a lot of respect and a lot of acknowledgement that some of this might be a bit countercultural.
Yep.
But with a North American for sure, you also implicitly have permission to do the same. So. It is perfectly acceptable to be very blunt, or to be very direct, or at least from the North Americans' perspective, they would find it perfectly acceptable. So speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to disagree. By in a very direct way. Ironically, by North American standards, that is. Not just acceptable, it's respected, right? Now, to augment this, I think the North American manager has to respect the local context.
Yes.
And yeah, they really have to respect the local context. And I think on balance, the onus is, if not equally, maybe more so on the foreign manager to be aware of the local context, to be sensitive to it, and by the way, I'm not Filipino, right? I will never be Filipino. So to the Filipino, it's water to the fish, but to me, it's something that I am not, right? And so if you can't be totally aware or sensitive, you can at least respect it and acknowledge that you can't be totally sensitive and aware. And I think that's very important. And one of the so this is now we're really getting into the territory of opinion here. But do Filipinos not disagree with their boss? Of course they do. Do they not have a way of expressing opinion? Of course they do, but it's just often done in a different way. And I think, and again, so this is my opinion. This is where I definitely, really the right person to ask this from is a Filipino. But my sense is that in the Philippines, communication and by communication, whether that's body language, whether it's verbal communication, it's very nuanced, or more nuanced than communication in North America. And to be quite frank, it's in my opinion, this is why I keep saying I have to be careful here, my opinion. But I think it's in general communication in the Philippines and in Filipino is just, for lack of a better term, it's just more sophisticated. Okay. And when I'm and I can it's hard to explain because it's just something that you sense as you try to become more aware. But as I'm speaking, sometimes I don't have a different way to say it, but I kind of realize it must be like I'm talking with a sledgehammer. When maybe if I had the means, there's a way to get the same or a better result, in a different way. And so yeah, so I think just recognizing that, is important. And I think it's incumbent on the foreigner, on the manager, and, especially when you're here in the Philippines, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we're a guest. And I think it's important. I think it's important that we acknowledge, and respect that fact, as best we can. And listen, I'll add a third point. But so if you can pull all that off, it's a great thing, because, if there's one thing that leads, so, UBX is in the business of innovation. If there's one thing that leads to creativity and innovation, it's diversity. Diversity in background, whether that's, ethnic or national background, diversity in background from an experience, a work experience, or a field of study perspective, diversity in ideas, diversity in language, diversity in thought. This is, so if you can make that work, everybody benefits, because diversity is just a tremendous advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah, good advice for both, Filipino managers and for the international managers, because you're right. I've seen so many who have not done well because they think they can just do here in Philippines what they did wherever they're from. So that's very good advice.
we would yeah. Get, it was funny, we would get, we would get people, from North America or coming from North America, and, John, I don't understand, we had a meeting and the team in Manila, they said yes. Yeah. And I said, no, you don't understand. I said, yes doesn't mean that it was agreed. It means that you were heard. Yes. Right? So it's, it can be as pedestrian as that. But again, if you can create that awareness, and you have, and you're right, you got to have respect, and and if you can come across like that, yeah, the outcome can be fantastic. But the flip side of that, I think you're right, it's also true.
Lots to learn on all sides. Yeah.
Yes, lots. Exactly, lots. We have. We, as North Americans, I know you're a fellow Canadian, and I think you'd probably agree with this, right? As much as we hope to contribute to the opportunities that we're pursuing here, I think I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you, but I suspect you'll probably agree with me. I have learned so much more. From having had this opportunity to be here. So, yeah.
I agree there, John. It really is a privilege and an opportunity to be here and to contribute to the nation. So, well, now, John, maybe if I could ask you just a bit about yourself. Maybe just a few background things, but would you consider yourself an introverted person or extroverted? Were you good at school? Were you kind of not so much good at school? Did you follow the rules, or were you rebellious? How would you describe yourself with these things?
Okay. You know, I actually think of myself as kind of introverted, but you know, again, I don't know if you're asking the right person. Maybe we should ask the people who work with me.
You kind of fooled me there. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, maybe maybe a little bit of both, right? I mean, I value I value time for being alone to process ideas.
Okay.
And so maybe I'm kind of introverted a little bit in that respect. But of course, I very much enjoy the company of others, especially or predominantly in business, the opportunity to network, to learn new things, to work with a large group of people. I love the opportunity to promote UBX. I have a session later today with the city of Balanga, where I'll be essentially salesperson number one, promoting you, and I really relish and enjoy those opportunities. So maybe in that respect, I'm a bit extroverted.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. I always did well in school. I think I was blessed with, we're all, as humans, we tend to be, people, oh, that person's confident or that person's insecure, something like that. And I think the psychologists call this the character attribution flaw, right? Like we see an example of somebody being a little insecure and we say, oh, that person's insecure. Well, that is, not only is that simplistic, it's just wrong. All people are highly complex beings. And so in some respects and in some matters, I suspect that I am, or at least come across as, maybe less confident or even insecure. But in other matters, I'm highly confident. And I guess the one thing that I've always been highly confident of is, so even if I didn't do well in a particular subject or course, I was very confident that if I wanted to, I could have done well. Okay, so I think I've been blessed with an innate, I think I've been blessed with a kind of an innate sense of confidence when it comes to my ability to do a job or to do some work. And so and so as a result, in general, on balance, I did pretty good in school. Yeah.
Okay.
And what was the third part?
Well, I think you kind of covered it in any case, but John, your upbringing, you mentioned that you had a European background and maybe transplanted perhaps to Canada. Is that, how did that, and how did it impact your upbringing?
Yeah. For the most part, the background, the heritage of my family is Eastern European. Like a lot of people coming to Canada, there's a lot of mixing, there's definitely some mixing going on as well. But predominantly it's an Eastern, and to be specific, a Polish heritage.
It is Polish.
My last name is actually pronounced Januszczak.
Okay.
Right. And it's a Polish name.
Sure.
When I was growing up, a lot of my aunts and uncles and my grandfather on my father's side was already had passed away, but my grandmother, they all, in family gatherings, they spoke Polish,
I see.
that sort of thing. But anyways, I was born and I was raised in Canada, and so I think I largely identify my experience with the Canadian experience. But I came from I have 3 siblings. My mother comes from a family. My mother is one of 12.
Now, John, When you, what's your opinion? You know, there's a lot of talk about nature versus nurture when it comes to leadership ability. Do you think leadership is something you're born with, or is it something that you're made into? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know the right answer, but I guess for the sake of the conversation, I can offer some thoughts and maybe an opinion, if I could be so bold as to offer an opinion. But I often think, you know, if I had to pick, and of course, it's probably, you know, maybe it's a little bit of everything, right? You know, maybe though that's the honest answer. But if I had to pick, you know, circumstances, I think, play a very large role in, you know, so you know, you see these stories of families, you know, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in very, you know, in a very fortunate kind of circumstance. I mean, you know, we were by no means wealthy, but we, you know, I don't remember ever going hungry or anything like that. But others have been, you know, less fortunate, and you hear stories about, you know, on something happens, and there's one of the, you know, maybe the older, you know, still a child, but the eldest child has to kind of step in to take care of the family, and you know, maybe that's a very dramatic example, and maybe a less dramatic example is, you know, there circumstances have happened, and it's thrust somebody who is maybe on paper ill prepared to manage a group, or to, you know, to manage a department, or maybe even a company, right? But circumstances dictate that, you know, if they're not effective, you know, the consequences are somewhat dire. And you know, often I think, given the right circumstances, people rise to the occasion. You know, sink or swim, right? You know, the best way to learn to swim is maybe lessons, but if you're thrown into the water and you have no choice but to figure it out on a moment's notice, I think humans have a tremendous ability in general, you know, to rise up and survive, you know, for lack of a better term. And so, yeah, so as you know, just on balance, I think context and circumstances play a large role. Yeah. But then that can be augmented by development. I think we all, you know, in general have the capacity. I mean, that's kind of the nature of our you know, kind of mental and biological makeup, right? We have the, you know, we are learning beings in general, and so yeah, so maybe circumstances and context augmented by the ability to learn. You know, if I had to choose, I would say for the most part, that's it. Now, you know, I think I got, you know, I think maybe the evidence is on my side there. I think most people who become managers or leaders, you know, if they look back far enough, they didn't know how to do that, or you know, they learned over time, and it was a function of learning, having a great mentor, or being thrust into a circumstance that largely led to them becoming an effective leader. Yeah, that's it. I think the stories of people just kind of miraculously showing up with innate leadership. Yeah, so I won't say that doesn't happen, or that doesn't exist, or that's not possible, but I suspect that those stories are in the definite minority.
Yeah. Okay. And how about sales experience, Johnny? You mentioned that a little while ago. Do you think that's important in a person's career? What do you think?
Okay, so superficially, I think at the end of the day, if you cannot sell, you cannot have a business. Yeah, I agree. You know, so yeah, so the equation, you know, is kind of simple, right? No sales equals no business. so you know, sooner or later, that's the formula. So I think as a leader, you need to learn how to, for lack of a better term, how to sell. Okay. And sales experience, I think, is definitely, not necessary to take on the role, but something that if you have the experience, I think it's very helpful. And if you don't, you definitely want to ingrain yourself into that experience, into that learning, I think, as soon as you can, as a manager or as a leader. Now, that being said, sales is not a title. Okay, just because somebody gives you the title of salesperson doesn't make you a salesperson. And being an effective salesperson, I think, goes back to a lot of the stuff that we already talked about. I think a good salesperson is a good salesperson, or a real salesperson is someone who is effective at communicating.
Okay.
I think it's someone, communicating with their team, communicating vision and purpose to their team, someone who can effectively communicate the value proposition of their product or solution to a customer. And of course, the biggest part of communication is actually inbound, the ability to listen, to effectively listen to, we talked about coaching, asking questions so that you can set yourself up to listen. Obviously listening to your customers. At UBX, we had some ideas and we tested them out in the market, but then of course the real success factor there is getting something to the market as soon as possible so we can listen, so we can learn, right? I mean, we at the end of the day, we need to hear that, and that's all part of sales. And of course, the other part of sales is, like most things, it's a process. Okay, so sales is sales isn't going out to lunches with prospective clients and kind of jamming a value proposition down somebody's throat, right? It's the communication part and the relationship building part, but also backed by a process, right? Effective sales is a factory. You generate you generate a database of prospects against your target market. So you need to know who your target market is. You need to know who you're selling to. You need to develop a database to prospect against, and then you need to have a machine that turns that into leads, and turns leads into into opportunities and activities that hopefully lead to a sale. And so part of it is the factory, right? Like the more widgets you have on the assembly line, the better the chance that you're going to have the finished product churning out at the end, right? So a big part of so the short answer is yes. But it depends what you mean by sales, and sales to me is a very, effective sales is a very rich topic. And as a leader, you need to become aware and at least aspire to become good at all of those things I mentioned and more, right? Yeah.
Sure you do. Okay. All right. Well done. And John, when you're assessing people, or how do you assess people when deciding who to promote? Do you have anything? What's your method for that?
Yeah, I think I think we spoke about this a little bit before. I think part of it's capability.
Yep.
But an even larger part of that is some of those leadership attributes. And even though they might not be a leader today, even though they might not be a leader today, do they demonstrate the ability to motivate? Do they demonstrate the ability to provide clarity on why you're doing something? Can people clearly articulate a vision and a purpose that will, add to the motivation, of somebody. And then the other, the other element of that, is perseverance or grit. The one, no one likes a quitter, I suppose. Yeah. I think, the manager or the leader is often the one who needs to demonstrate the greatest amount of perseverance or grit to motivate the people on their team. And so people who who demonstrate perseverance and grit in the face of adversity or less than optimal circumstances, that might be an indicator of somebody that you would be looking at. And just to be, I don't want to underplay, as we've been talking, it's reminded me that we also have to be careful what we mean by promotion. And I think when we have been, so far in this conversation, when we've been talking about promotion, we have been talking about leadership and management. Yeah. And ostensibly that is correlated to, leading a group of people or a team or an organization. There is another form of promotion, and maybe the better term to use there, or at least an alternative term to make it distinct from how we've been talking about it so far, is progression. Yeah, so when we do talk about pure capability, it is critically important that you provide a means of progression for your people and for the people in your organization. Not everyone is going to be a people manager or a leader in the way that we've been discussing up until now. Yeah, good point. But they will become expert in what they're in their craft, in their area of expertise. And that expertise can become critical or a critical differentiator for your organization. And so, you want experts, and you need to have a way that allows them to, quote unquote, be promoted and be recognized and be acknowledged. So I as we've been talking and as I've been thinking, I just want to make sure that, we've been talking, I think, about promotion from a people management and a people or organizational leadership perspective. But there also is promotion from a purely capability perspective. And like I said, maybe I'll use the word progression, but it's important that it just, like the people that might aspire to and grow from an organizational leadership or people leadership perspective. On the capability side, it's equally important, maybe even more important, that you have a system in place that recognizes and acknowledges their progression. And so you do need to be able to promote, quote unquote, from a capability perspective as well. So yeah, just to kind of balance the conversation as well. I think it's important that I bring that up.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you did, John. John, you've also mentioned motivation more than a couple of times maybe, but do you think motivation is something that people are born with, a core of motivation, or do you think it's something that can be imposed on them? That's maybe not the right word, but something that they can be inspired through outside, that leads into my next question, which is, how do you motivate people? And is there people that you just can't motivate, or can you motivate anyone?
Yeah, sure. I think motivation. So first of all, to tie this back to what we were talking about before, in order to get something done, the people that are going to do it, the first question is, can they do it? So that's capability. The second question is, will they do it? That's motivation. So motivation is a critical ingredient to getting things done. I think it's highly personal. At the end of the day, it's highly personal, and I think it is largely driven by context and circumstance. And I think that's okay, because they can all, you know, that can work in concert or in alignment. So let me, you know, let's just come up with some examples to make this very concrete. Someone who has to put food on their table or get a roof over their heads, and that's not obvious on how that's going to occur. That could be their motivation. And yes, it's very basic and it's very fundamental, but when it is fundamental and it matters, that can be a huge motivator. I mean, you know, like, it's so obvious that we often don't even think about it, right? For some people, unfortunately, but for some people, that is the circumstance, and that will be the motivator. And you know, it is what it is, that could result in a very, you know, in a level of motivation that provides a tremendous amount of contribution to the mission or the task at hand for you as a leader. And so, you know, for some people, it might be as basic as that. I think, you know, I think as you move beyond surviving, the next thing might be, you know, I'm just going to be a little simple here, right? But it might just be, it might kind of just be, you know, enjoying what you're doing, enjoying the people that you work with. And, you know, again, creating an environment that is fun, that, you know, for us anyways at UBX, that's open, that's honest, you know, where, you know, we like to, you know, we like to laugh, and we like to, you know, get together. Well, the pandemic obviously has made that, now we do this virtually, you know, more so than ever, but listen, let's not discount that. That can be a tremendous motivator for people. So putting together a great team and a great culture can be a great motivator, and that can, you know, there's no reason why that can't be aligned with, you know, getting a job done or fulfilling a mission. And then beyond that, it's really purpose. It's really purpose. What gets you, you know, let's assume you're paying the bills, you know, you got the kids in school, and you know, if you have kids, you'll be able to put them through school. You're with a group of people that you like working with in general. You know, what's next? And I think what's next is what, you know, that is a sense of purpose. What actually gets you out of bed in the morning? And at the end of the day, I think that can be the ultimate motivator. That can be the ultimate motivator. And so, you know, at UBX, we are, you know, I talk about invisible banking, but invisible banking is actually, in our eyes, a means of providing truly inclusive prosperity. We see digital, you know, I mentioned that we see that the path to invisible banking is through digital platforms. We see digital as the great equalizer. Through digital, the cost of distribution comes way down. And therefore, it is easier to provide access to many, many more. And if many, many more have access, then many, many more have opportunity. And in fact, our tagline and our vision is that we provide opportunity and access to all. And so for me personally, and I think for a lot of people on our team, it's not hard to get up in the morning, because from a purpose perspective, we know that we are making a difference in people's lives. So we have an online lending platform, for example. You know, in the past, you know, if you were a small business, you know, try getting a loan at a bank. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And then you're forced to go to alternative lending channels, which are, often, if they're not, maybe of, uh, maybe not quite reputable sources, but if it's not that, it's very expensive. Maybe it's a reputable lender, but they have to kind of manage their risk, so it's kind of it's expensive. So we've created a way of embedding a lending experience into digital platforms that allows us to make credit accessible to even more SMEs, but also to make it easier for reputable lenders to lend to them, because through this digital platform, we provide more data to the lender, and it's a real win-win, right? So the lender will lend more money, they'll lend it at better rates, and for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises that were excluded or shut out of this credit market, now all of a sudden they're included, and we know that we are making a difference in the lives of those businesses, because when the system works well, they borrow money to grow their business so that they can enhance their life, and then they in turn employ others, and they in turn enhance their lives. And since the beginning of the pandemic, we've processed over 1.5 billion pesos worth of loans on this platform, and through that we are making a positive and material impact on people's lives, right? It's hard. In fact, it's hard. I said it's easy to get up in the morning. It's hard for me to go to bed, because I think about the difference we're making, and what's still still on the table, what still needs to be done. And so anyways, I think having, I can speak very personally to this, obviously, but I think in general, having that sense of purpose is the ultimate motivator. So, unwind that in reverse. So somebody doesn't share your purpose. Okay. They don't share the values that you share as an organization. Okay. They've already got a roof over the head of their family and they're surviving just fine. Yeah, maybe that person is not, maybe that's not the right person for your organization, right? But of course, the real story is the other way around, right? Someone who, someone who shares your values, someone who shares your purpose, or finds it easy to share in your purpose. I think those people will be highly motivated. And in that regard, if you have, and these are not difficult things, but if you have those things, then I don't think it's very difficult to find or instill a sense of motivation, in your team.
Okay. Well, John, maybe if I could take it to a couple more personal questions that I hope you're comfortable answering, but we'll see. John, well, you're working at senior levels, you're engaged in your business, you're talking about how you're excited, it's hard to go to bed, all this kind of stuff, but it's also, if you don't watch, your health can suffer, and a lot of people now are talking about this. You and I were not spring chicken. Well, I'll tell for myself, I am definitely not a spring chicken, and I'm seeing people really impact their health because they're not, confident, don't have proper activities about it. Do you have any special food or exercise programs that you try to follow, and how effective are you at following them? What do you think?
Sure. That's a great question. Well, first of all, I think you're right. The temptation to get sucked up in your job, is omnipresent. I guess if I can, share one truism, it's never done. So if your mentality is that you can kind of work harder to kind of get it, to get it, it's not like that. I mean, it's never done, right? So work will never end. So just, you have to accept that. And then accepting that, at least for me anyways, I think you fall back on what actually works in business. I talked about sales. It's important that you actually have a repeatable process. The hero salesperson or the hero programmer, that's great, but it's not sustainable. You need to fall back on a repeatable process. And so when it comes to personal life, you know, you set yourself up the same way. So a routine, a habit, and a process that I established, you know, many years ago was waking up early and going to the gym. And it's a very, or at least before the pandemic, it was a very religious thing for me. I would get up in the morning, and I would go to the gym. And sometimes I would go to the gym, and I don't think I was very effective at all. I was kind of, you know, going through the motions, and I might have even been better off staying in bed. But the habit trains the kind of the muscle of making sure that you hold sacrosanct a bit of time for some physical activity every day. And you know, it's like that at work too. I talked about having regular one-on-one meetings with your direct reports, or maybe some coaching sessions. And you know, sometimes those meetings will feel very routine, and you might, you know, it's almost like, you know, you're going through the motions, but the fact that you do it and create the habit, and through the habit create the repeatable process is actually what's the most important thing. And so anyway, so you can leverage on that for your own personal life, I think. And so for me personally, yeah, I've always gone to the gym. Now with that obviously has been, you know, the gym's shut down, or at least where I am, the gym's closed. And so I won't lie to you, it's been a little bit more difficult, because part of the habit was getting out of the house to get to the gym, you know, to kind of make it real. And so I've been doing workout videos. You know, so I recruited my wife into this. I said, hey, you know, keep me honest here, and you know, or let's keep each other honest here. But it's important that, you know, every day we block off some time to do you know, 30 to 60 minutes you know, of a workout with what we have at hand in the house. So we bought some dumbbells and some mats and stuff like that, and we've tried to recreate that routine here. And you know, it's a little more difficult because you're in your house. So you know, it's sometimes a little easier to put it aside. But I've tried to do that. You know, diet. You know, when it comes to health, I think exercise is kind of probably 20% of the equation. I think 80% of the equation is diet.
Okay.
So we, you know, I've tried to cut back on, and you know, listen, I'm not a doctor. Don't do anything that I'm telling you to do without seeking the right advice. But for me, I've found that eating carbohydrates in moderation has been helpful for me. So, you know, less snacks, less rice, you know, less potatoes, less bread. You know, that's helped for me. But again, you know, under the pandemic, you know, it's tricky. And if anyone's had Filipino food, they know that it's difficult to eat without rice. So you know, it's maybe I'll just, you know, I said I wouldn't have rice today, but you know, we're having adobo. Maybe we'll have just a little bit of rice with this. And so, you know, of course I'm susceptible to that. And so I'll be honest with you, I've put on a little bit of weight since the lockdown. But you know, I become aware. You know, I'm aware of that, and so I try to course correct, as best you can. But definitely, you know, definitely, in my opinion, creating a habit around regular exercise and some attention to diet, I think is a really helpful enabler when it comes to the rest of your life, and especially work. I think, you know, I think you just become a more balanced person, and you just show up in a better mood, for lack of a better term. And And I think that's important. Yeah, I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Okay, good advice. All right. Now, John, raising kids is another aspect. It's easy to get, if you don't watch, you can focus too much on your career and forget about your kids. And there's a lot of differences today, how kids are raised from when we were young. But I don't know, what advice can you give people on, some kind of balance? I think balance is an overused term, but how do you balance your career with your responsibilities with your kids? You got to spend quality time with them. What do you recommend? Some tips on that?
Yeah. I when my kids were really, really young, and like most new parents, we're kind of hyper involved and very concerned, as you should be. Why not, right? But I remember the principal of the grade school that my kids were going to. She said something. She said, we had brought up something that we were concerned about, and she said, don't, like, the last thing you should worry about is the academic, is the learning. Kids they'll learn in spite of us. and I think, yeah, so I just to start in just kind of generalities before I make it personal. I think that's exactly that. Like, our kids will develop and they will learn almost in spite of us. And really the best thing we can do is provide an environment, a safe environment, but even maybe more so an environment that allows them to make some mistakes, allows them, to at times fail, but on their own initiative, so that they kind of learn that it's okay to fail, but they also learn their own lessons. But at the end of the day, they are safe. You're not kind of putting them in danger. So I think yeah. So you set up some of the maybe some process and some routine and some environment, and then you let them go at it. Let them find themselves, and they like that principal told or discussed with me and my wife, right? Like, they'll learn and they'll pursue their own thing in spite of us. So I think our job is to just kind of set them up for opportunity, and to set them up to in a way learn their own lessons. I think that's that's number one. To make it a little bit more personal, I mean, one thing that's been nice, I guess, about the lockdown is it's forced us to spend a lot more time together. It's funny, actually. It's ironic. I started the conversation by saying that as a leader, it's important to have trust with the people who work with you and for you. That trust is created through relationships, and relationships come by spending time. And sometimes I guess we forget that the most important people that we need to spend time with is our own families. And the pandemic has been very trying circumstances for many. It's the same lockdown and pandemic for all of us, but how it affects us is different. But for me and for my family, one of the impacts or the effects of the pandemic is just out of sheer circumstances, having had the ability or spending much more time together. And as much as the lockdown is inconvenient, and listen, we all get cabin fever, and like I said, with a lot of respect to other people who are definitely in much more trying circumstances than myself, but for us, on balance, we're okay, and the side benefit of it has been the ability to spend a lot more time. And and that's actually been a real blessing for me personally, and I think for us as a family. the kids, their school has been online, but when school ends and, we can eat lunch together, and we could never eat lunch together before. We're eating lunch together. We're sharing stories. In our house anyways, we've definitely taken advantage of Netflix and streaming like anybody else, but we're often watching shows together, right? And we'll get into the story, and that leads to conversation. But before we even do that, we make up, we've made up, games, that we can play together. And sometimes these games we make up are just ridiculously stupid or silly, but we laugh about it, right? And we have fun, like that. And I think, if anything, listen, we're all imperfect, and we all have our challenges. But for me, and maybe for my family, the one thing about the one maybe positive out of the pandemic is a reaffirmation on not just the importance of your family, but just a real happy reminder that spending time leads to a lot of great outcomes.
Sure it does. Okay, very good. All right. And John, how about what would you recommend fields of study, say for your children and for young people in general? I know you studied astrophysics. I studied chemistry I don't know why. But what do you recommend fields of study for young people? Do you think it's wide open?
Unequivocally, the best thing that you could do is pursue studies in astrophysics. They're absolutely not. I'm joking. Of course, I'm completely joking. Yeah. It's like what we've been discussing. It's the process, the routine, and the habit is more important than the topic or the subject itself.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think it's the pursuit of a study that actually matters. I think it matters a lot less what that is, and none of it. By the way, one of the most, I don't know. I'm taking myself back like maybe about 15 years, but I had the opportunity to work with, when I was working in commercial software and we were supporting a company, I had an opportunity to work with a fellow who was, managing a technology team. And I was always blown away by the depth of thought and the amount of lateral thinking, or at least to me, it showed up as lateral thinking that this fellow had. There are people that you're just drawn to, and I was just kind of drawn to the way that this guy worked and how he thought. Anyways, so this is technology. This was in a financial services company, but this guy studied music. He was a musician, so did pursuing music. And by the way, this guy was an expert musician, by the way, not this guy wasn't just a musician. This guy was an expert musician. And he studied it. This is not like music for fun. I mean, this guy studied it. So did studying music, did that preclude him from having a career in deep technology? No, not at all. In fact, it actually, in my opinion, made him more effective. And so I think it's so I think it's the grit, it's the perseverance, of actually going through the process of pursuing studies, pursuing an element of capability or expertise in something. But you could always, you can always switch into something else. But it's the habit. It's the grit. It's the getting through when times are tough, in pursuit of a goal or an outcome that will actually serve you best. So yeah, so I guess so
Okay,
you
so
know,
it's wide open, yeah.
I think it's wide open. I mean, I don't know. Like these days, data analytics, and don't get me wrong. I think machine learning and AI is going to have a profound effect. Maybe Stephanie C, who's a famous data scientist in the Philippines. She has a company that she founded called Thinking Machines. I was at a conference that she was speaking at, and she said, data transformation follows digital transformation. And I think there's an element of truth to that. And so if you were looking for something that's the next big thing, and I don't even think it's the next big thing, I think it's happening right now. That might be interesting, but then again, the way that AI and machine learning works today is that they are trained on historical data, and as is becoming newsworthy these days, they are susceptible to the biases and whatnot that of the data that they're actually trained on. And so, getting back to my story of the musician, there is an element of higher level thinking or lateral thinking that even in the age of big data and AI will be required.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, don't get me wrong. There are some hot industries, and I don't think you can go wrong studying technology and studying things like data science, because I think they very much are in demand, very timely. Even at UBX, I would love for you to study those things so that we could hire you into our organization. But more so than that, it's the pursuit of a field of study itself that is the most important thing. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, John, something that I know you think a lot about is the transformations occurring in the economy. People talk about the new normal. It's a overused thing, but what's going to change after this pandemic has finished, and what's going to go back to the way it was in the good old days, a year ago or so? What are some of the things you see happening?
Yeah, I think, especially in the Philippine context, I think the Philippines, because of geography, because of socioeconomic reality, because of the, just how, maybe kind of fractured, some of the, and by fractured, I mean, lack of a common system or platform.
Okay.
I think the Philippines was a bit of a laggard from a digital, an adoption of digital, from an adoption of digital perspective. Okay. But of course that exists everywhere as well, but to different degrees. Yeah. And maybe it shows up in a different way. Maybe like I don't know that my parents were digital bankers before the pandemic, but they're probably using their banking app now. I'll tell you that much, right? So, and I think that's the big thing. I think the pandemic, regardless of where you are in the world, but maybe I'll speak specifically about the Philippines. I think the pandemic has accelerated in a very large manner the adoption of digital by consumers. So consumer behaviors have changed. I think they've changed beyond an inflection point. So businesses have had to go online out of sheer necessity. Coming out of the pandemic, consumer behaviors will have changed to the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't have to do this digitally, but I actually prefer doing it digitally now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's here to stay. So that is here to stay. Yeah. I think when things become less restricted, the opportunity for hybrid experiences will increase. So I think digital is here to stay. I think consumer behaviors have changed in an irreversible way. But with an opening, the now predominantly digital experiences will be able to be augmented by physical or face-to-face, elements that that will only enrich. But to think that you will kind of flick a binary switch and go back to a purely face-to-face paper-based, I just don't see that happening. And so yeah, so I mean, thinking of hybrid hybrid solutions that leverage both offline and online, I think are a huge opportunity. So for example, just to make this very concrete, one thing that we're betting on at UBX is what we're calling Banco sa Barangay. In a drive to digital, the legislators and regulators in the Philippines are opening the door to what are effectively independent banking agents. What UBX can do, and what we're doing, is we are digitizing the platform on which these agents will conduct their business. And so we're connecting them to financial service providers. We are creating technology and hardware in some cases so that they can use it, but then they are located in the community and they are inevitably or invariably serving their customers face-to-face, or it's because of a personal offline relationship that allows them to provide their customers, or provide service or financial services to their customers. And so it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the financial service providers because they can reach a larger audience. It's a win for the community-based agents because it's a livelihood or a source of income. And it's a win for the customers because everything is digitized up to the last mile. And so when they are interacting with their agent, it's in real time and it's cost efficient. But it's also, a hybrid. At the end of the day, it's a hybrid experience where digital is augmenting, a face-to-face or a community-based experience. And I think coming out of the lockdown, many more of that type of hybrid experience and leveraging digital to improve, something that might still take place face-to-face. I think that's going to occur, and that's the opportunity, on top of of consumers being more willing than ever to embrace even purely digital experiences.
Yeah. Okay, good, John. And John, now you spent a lot of time in the Philippines, and seems made a lot of contributions to the nation and people and so forth. And yeah, people say good things about you too, John. But now, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities for the nation over the next 5 or 10 years? I know you mentioned on the digital side. Can you expand on that a bit? And are there other areas that you can see happening? What's your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, the Philippines is going to be at some point is going to be a G20 economy. The market size is too large. Yeah, and the opportunity and the fundamentals are too good for, in my opinion, for that not to happen. And the Philippines has always, the Philippines has been, maybe a bit of an anomaly for people looking for, so the opportunity is obvious. Just to use some of the financial services statistics.
Okay.
30%, maybe 70% of the population unbanked, or if they're not unbanked, if they're not unbanked, they're underbanked. Okay.
Underbanked. Sure.
We talked about access, very fundamental issues with access to credit by SMEs that make up, 99.5% of all businesses in the Philippines, and there are a majority of businesses in most economies, but here, even more so, yet at the same time, a highly educated country, for those of us who are a little English centric, it's an English, it's ostensibly an English speaking country. Certainly an English friendly country. Most people here have a mobile phone. or are connected in some way
Yeah.
to the internet, you know, through, if nothing else, a mobile device. And so, you know, you've got a connected and a disconnected country at the same time. And I think investment wants, you know, like it wants to be here, but it's held back because no one's known how to kind of connect those two dots. But with the pandemic, the dots have become connected because the consumer behaviors and the businesses that have to support them have, out of sheer necessity, had to embrace digital. And that tells me that a lot of the pent-up demand or potential of investment, you know, is now going, you know, now that the dots are being connected, it's going to be unleashed on the Philippines. And, you know, as money flows into this economy, it's going to grow this economy. It's going to accelerate the growth of this economy. And so, yeah, while there's likely some road bumps along the way, and I think we're experiencing them now as well, but just, you know, solve the pandemic, the fundamentals are very strong. And then on top of that, you've had this change in consumer behavior and businesses responding to it. And I think that, you know, on top of the fundamentals that already existed, the biggest fundamental of which being the opportunity of the size of the market itself, you know, forest for the trees, right? So this, yeah, I think that, I think we just need to get out of the pandemic. I think the fundamentals are strong. I think there's a positive outcome to this because of the changes in behavior. And yeah, this is going to lead to a lot of investment in this country.
That's interesting. Okay, so that's exciting, John. Now, John, maybe if I could finish off with a personal question about your personal future. Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? Do you have plans to slow down at some point, or is it still going to be full speed ahead for the foreseeable future? What do you what do you think, John?
Yeah, well, UBX, you know, is obviously the best place. UBX and Union Bank of the Philippines, obviously the best place to work. You know, yeah, in the world, yeah. So no plans on you know, no plans on changing direction. You know, and you know, I'm it might sound like I'm joking a little bit, but I'm actually not, right? We have just got started. Personally, I'm you know, yeah, I'm not 30 years old, but I'm not old either. You know, I am still eager for and looking for the more challenges, more opportunities. And at UBX and with Union Bank of the Philippines, we've just gotten started. We've really just gotten started. You know, just to put things into perspective, we had this hypothesis. We incorporated the UBX in December 2018. We didn't start operations until April 2019, and so we actually haven't been at it that long.
I see.
Yet, you know, we measure our growth in triple-digit multiples, right? Like we grew over the last year. We grew, you know, transaction volume by over 450 times, not percent, Richard, times, 450 times. You know, we've acquired customers at 200, yeah, I think almost 240 times, not percent, times, year over year. And on top of that, we're just getting started. And I truly believe that financial technology, you know, embedding financial services into digital platforms is the way of the future.
It is.
And it's an industry that, you know, the venture capital money has really started to pour into this, and that's often a really good leading indicator. And so yes, at a macro level, at an industry level, we're just getting started. But even at a personal level, we're just getting started. You know, it's a real, you know, privilege for me to work, you know, to work in the Philippines. It's a privilege for me to work with this organization. It's a privilege for me to work with this team. And maybe the biggest privilege of all is to, in our own way, to make a positive impact, you know, on society with what we're doing. I'm really enjoying, you know, we were joking about not being able to go to sleep at night and being eager to wake up in the morning. I'm enjoying that. It just fills me with a lot of, you know, obviously with a lot of purpose, but it fills me with a lot of energy. Yeah. So
John, what you guys are doing is really legacy building. I mean, when 70% of the population is essentially unbanked, I mean, the opportunity for improving the lives of people is remarkable. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm a couple years older than you, but, you know, starting to think about how, you know, when you're going to have your grandkids someday, and this is something, you know, I think you'll be able to talk to them about and the impact that you and your group are having. So well done to you, and well done on the maneuvering your career to be able to keep doing work here, you know. Yeah, John. So thank you very much, John. You shared a lot of real in-depth. You went deep, I guess, is the kind of the bad joke there. What is it? It's been about, I think, a 2.5-hour session. So, John,
yeah.
Very well done, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Listen, thank you for the very kind words about, you know, about what we're doing at UBX.
It's awe-inspiring. Yeah.
And you know, I appreciate the opportunity to share my own story.
Yeah.
But you know, I really dedicate this session to, you know, to the real, for me, the real story here, and that's the people, you know, that I've had the privilege of working with in the past, and very definitely the people I am working with today. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, I hope we can support it. I hope this gets her. I'm sure it will. People listen to the stuff, they get inspired and think about their own digital transformation and as well using services like yours. So really appreciate the time, John. You really gave it a lot. That's for sure. So yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks.
And we'll see you soon. Okay, that was John. I'll say it the wrong way, but Januszczak. I know that's but please don't kill me. I know you won't. This was Going Deep, of course, with me, Richard Mills, and we'll look forward to more. And I hope maybe we'll have John back again, and we'll keep up with his progress on a regular basis, because there's so much that you're doing there when you're growing at 200 or 400%. That's insane. So thank you very much again. That was Going Deep with me, Richard Mills. Thank you.